Good evening. My name is Joseph Thornley. I'm the CEO of 76 Engage, Metrolinx's public engagement partner for virtual consultation, and I'll be your moderator for this evening's event. Welcome to this discussion. Tonight's discussion will focus on the ECWE elevated stations, and thank you for taking the time to be here. One important note, this event is being closed captioned. To use this feature, you can simply click on the CC that you should see at the bottom of your video window, and that will turn on closed captioning. At the outset, I want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of Indigenous peoples, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. In particular, these lands are covered by 20 treaties, and we have a responsibility to recognize and value the rights of Indigenous nations and peoples and conduct business in a manner that is built on the foundation of trust, respect, and collaboration. Metrolinx is committed to building meaningful relationships with Indigenous peoples and to working towards meaningful reconciliation with the original caretakers of this land. Also, just before we begin, let's take a moment to think about safety. Safety is fundamental to everything that Metrolinx does. As we know, construction for the ECWE has begun, which means that trucks, machinery, and equipment are operating in the Martin Grove, Kipling, and Scarlett area now or soon. So, please stay alert in these construction zones. Obey all construction signage in the area. Cross only at designated crosswalks. Let's all be safe. So we've scheduled this evening's session to last an hour and a half. We'll begin with a presentation from Metrolinx, and then we'll take as many questions as possible. First, Metrolinx will provide an update on what they are planning for the elevated stations. Then they will share the results of the elevated section survey that was open for public input earlier this month. Now, I should say the emphasis is on the elevated stations. There was an earlier event on March 30th that focused on the underground stations, and you can find a recording of that event along with answers to the questions that were asked. And if you are looking for information on the below grade stations, please do go there, and hopefully you'll find everything. We'll start with written questions following the presentation, and then we'll move over to the Zoom room. So if you look under your video under the video window, you'll see a yellow Join Zoom button that's right above the pictures of the panelists. You don't need to do that now, but at the end of the presentation, if you don't want to ask your question in writing, you can go to the Zoom room, and Gurjeet is there, and she will tell you when it's possible to turn on your microphone so that you can ask the panel your question directly. So, the presentation you're about to hear also can be downloaded from the site, and you'll see right above the Tell Us What You Think About the Station Designs button, a button for the presentation. You can download that. That's right below the agenda on your page. So I'd now like to introduce our panel of experts. First off, David Panici is the project sponsor for the Eglinton Crosstown West Extension at Metrolinx. He's joined by Aman Gill, the Manager of Community Relations for ECW at Metrolinx. Kolade Akaode is from the ECWE project team at Metrolinx, and Sarah Chowdhury is the Project Manager, Environmental Programs and Assessment at Metrolinx. Finally, Omid Nakai is the Principal Designer for ARUP, Metrolinx's technical advisor on the project, and with him is Henry Jeans, the associate principal at ARUP. So we've got a good panel of experts here tonight, and I believe that, David, you're going to lead off the presentation.
Thank you, Joseph. Exciting material that we've So with the station's designs progressing, and we've been meeting regularly in our working group sessions with forward the Kipling Eglinton station options, and those options were reviewed with the community and provided input. And then in March, we actually brought forward the underground stations for community consultation. We look forward to hearing a lot more from the residents and the community members, and some of the feedback that we apologies for a bit of the technical difficulty on the audio side of things here. Just a bit of kink that we're trying to work out this evening, so apologies for that. I'll start again on this slide here. What we've heard so far about the station designs and the excellent work that we've done to date. So over the last few months, we continue to progress the station designs with our key stakeholders, such as the City of Toronto and TTC. We held our first virtual open house on the stations, specifically for Kipling and Eglinton Station, back in December, where we brought forward a few options for the community input, and we've actually successfully made a decision on that station option, thanks to all your support and feedback. In March, we brought forward the 4 underground stations for the project, and we continue to receive feedback since March through our online poll. And over the past few months, here is a summary of some of the feedback that we've heard to date on the station specifically. So we heard concerns about impacts of construction to the local neighborhoods. So trying to keep the station footprints as small as possible, both on the construction side for construction purposes and also for design purposes, and keeping traffic and construction impacts to a minimum in order to minimize community disruption. So we're working hard to try to address those concerns through the project design. On the architecture and design side, we heard a lot of feedback from the community on the importance of trying to blend the stations and the designs into the overall community context through both what's existing in the neighborhoods today and the natural environment. We heard feedback from other projects, and trying to build on and improve those projects through the ECWE project, through design attractiveness, building modern stations, and having high quality architecture. We heard a lot about accessibility to stations. So really important for all transit users to have full accessibility. Customers use the stations of all ages and abilities, so that's really important, and that's always something that we take very seriously. In addition, on the accessibility front, we heard information about the key interface between the buses that run along the Eglinton corridor and then the north-south streets. So having really good transit connections between bus and LRT and subway. And then also having good bike connections and pedestrian connections to stations. So these are all things that we've continued to work on through the design process over the past few months. And it's an ongoing process to continue developing the design and bring them forward to the communities in a timely way. We can go to the next slide. So I'm going to pass it on to Omid here from our technical advisor team to talk about the station design principles.
Thanks, David, and thanks the community for giving us this opportunity to present the design of elevated stations today and seek feedback. In this slide, you will see some of the design principles that we have utilized here on this project on Eglinton West, and we explained these principles in the underground stations that we presented a couple of months ago. These 4 principles are coming from the creating a safe and efficient passenger connection to the stations as much as possible. And in that, we are trying to make sure that we have a good connectivity with cyclists, bus users, and pedestrians to the station, in particular the bus users, as they are providing almost 80% of our passengers coming to the stations. We are improving passenger experience as much as possible, applying a user-centered design vision for the whole line. In that, we are trying to make sure that we provide natural light anywhere that is possible. Intuitive wayfinding and very, very streamlined way of design to make sure that the passengers routes from the station's external spaces all the way to platforms are very legible and user friendly. We are designing all of the stations to be fully accessible and safe for all transit users as well. In addition, we are creating inviting outdoor spaces, and in the case of obviously elevated stations, they are sitting next to a very green, lush area. So we are trying to make sure that this is considered, and planting can help to blend these stations as much as possible into the existing environment. And you will see in the next few slides how these are all coming together. All of our station design also, they are trying to accommodate and future-proof for what's going to happen around the stations and future conditions that we are going to have around the station. You'll see in the case of Jane Station how we have future-proof for future LRT in Jane around Jane Station. Next slide, please. So. Just again to recap how we try to respond in the station features to some of these principles. In the case of creating a safe and efficient passenger connection to the stations, we have design curb cuts to improve pedestrian safety around in the intersection. We have modified the bus stops around each station and move them so that the passenger connection from the buses to station entrances are optimized as much as possible. We have provided bus laybys where possible. We have created bike racks allocation around the stations based on Toronto Green standards that we have been using. And also we have tried to make sure that ancillary and emergency buildings are located as such that helps with the overall passenger experience. In terms of the improvement of passenger experience, we have redundancy of elevators for all the stations. In this case, you will see that each station will have 2 entrances, and the entrances are less than 100 meters away from each other, and each station entrance basically will have 1 elevator, and the redundancy is achieved through that. And we also have a very unique station platform characteristics, and introduce also skylights, into the passenger vertical circulation, so that again we can create a much better connectivity between inside and outside of the station. And specifically in the case of elevated stations, they are somehow being experienced being part of the nature as much as possible. we are also creating inviting outdoor public spaces, and by that you will see that we have created ample public plazas as much as possible, again trying to balance the impact that we have on Eglinton Flats as well as Humber Valley, and then also introducing plantings at plazas, and also introducing green roofs for a station entrance and also for station canopy. We are integrating into local context by maintaining the existing number of lanes in and around the station. We are minimizing the footprint, and I think it's quite important to keep this in mind, because we are sitting next to Eglinton Flats in the case of Jane Station, and next to Humber Valley in the case of Scarlett Station. You will see the way that we have tried to minimize the impact later in our slides. We are protecting heritage building, and that's mainly around other parts of this line, but in the case we have treated the green lush area around our station as a very valuable asset, which is there, and we are trying to make sure that we have the lowest impact possible. And we also working quite closely and trying to work with the existing train to work in our benefit, the way that we have designed the stations, and that helped us also to minimize our station's footprint. Next slide, please. So in this slide, you will see a section which is cut through the Jane Station, and in that the first thing that you will see is the fact that station platforms are straddled over the road, and the reason for that is, of course, by doing that we have managed to keep two entrances either side of the road, and provide better connectivity in each side of the station platform, and then also obviously provide better connectivity to bus stops that they are there in east entrance and west entrance. And we could do that because this part of the elevated guideway, the alignment was part of our project, and we managed to work with our alignment as such that we can accommodate this straddling. 80% of our passengers are coming from the north-south buses, and by doing so we have managed to respond to much better connectivity between the bus users and the LRT. We have in this you can see that one of our entrances, which is in this case west entrance, is slightly bigger than the east entrance, and the idea behind that was we have accommodated our main vertical circulation in one of the entrances. In this case, we have accommodated the escalators in the western entrance and the elevator and stairs in the eastern entrance, and by doing so we have combined the staircase to be not only be used as a kind of typical public stair in normal operation, but also in the case of fire, also an evacuation from the station will be used as means of escape. And by doing that, again, it helped us to make sure that we utilize our vertical circulation as such that we minimize our station footprint, especially in the eastern side, where we have also having a lower impact on the Eglinton Flats. You will see also another escape stair toward the west side of station entrance on the western side, and that's needed as part of the code. And one of the other things that you will see here is that even when the passengers go from escalators up to platform, you will see that even skylights are devised right on top of this journey, so that in most of this time as passengers go along, they will still be connected to the green lush area. You will also see when they come to platform level, the designated waiting area at platform and shelter are designed there, and the shelter is designed as such that provides a relative thermal comfort, especially during the harsh winter weather. When the passengers are at platform, they have a very spectacular view to Eglinton Flat, from both sides. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the Scarlett station. which in principle works the same as the previous slide, which was cut through Jane Station. Scarlett Station sits on the northern side of Eglinton Avenue when it comes to and intersects with Scarlett Road. In the northwest side, we have located the main entrance, and on the north of that main entrance, we also have the Richview neighborhood and towers. We have tried to work with the alignment as such that we have provide most of this station amenities as needed on the northwest side of the intersection, as such to make sure that we have minimized the impact that we have on the eastern side, whilst we still provide the required connectivity and vertical circulation for the passengers that they are coming from south and get off at the bus stop on the northeast side. We also provided an integrated connectivity from the Richview neighborhood through some walkways and ramps and stairs, connecting the adjacent neighborhood all the way back to the plaza in front of the northwest entrance, and making sure that they have a seamless connection to the station. We have also provided a connection on the back western side again to help with the overall connectivity toward the Eglinton road as well. You will see that on the northwest entrance you have the north-south buses stopping in front of a plaza, which is paved such to create a homogeneous area right in front of the station entrances, and it's also designed to be in front of the bus stop so that the passengers get off from the bus stops, go to station entrance very, very immediately, and the journey from bus stop to station entrance is optimal. On the Eglinton Avenue also, specifically perhaps when with this line is operational, some of the night time buses might be more operational here along the east-west corridor. They are still, and even sometime during the day, they're still getting off on the western side of the Eglinton station entrance. On the eastern side, you will see that, again, we have created a plaza such that the MUP, which is coming from south, is continued upwards on the north side, so that we have a clear, connectivity between south and north, and make sure that this is maintained, and together with the cycle path here. I think we can go to the next slide, please. Oh, I forgot to also say, sorry, if you go to the previous slide, we also devised, you can see right on top of the Route 32-405 note, that we have also devised the bicycle racks for passengers that are coming with bicycles to drop off their bicycle there, and each station typically has 40 bicycle racks combined in either side of the station entrances. And that way we have made sure that our Toronto Green Standards guidelines are adhered to. Next slide, please. So this is Jane Station, and you would have seen from the section that I explained earlier, it's the same thing. The principle is the same. We have two entrances either side. The entrances are responding to connectivity to the bus stops coming from north and south, and the plazas are designed in the case of Jane Station to accommodate future expansion of Jane Street in case the Jane LRT project will become reality, and that way it becomes a fully integrated interchange between the LRT and BRT. You will see that also we have devised and located some ramps and stairs on the back of station entrances to provide connectivity of passengers that they are getting off here, and encourage them to go and use Eglinton Flats for any recreational activity that they are thinking about. So that way we are trying to connect, to the existing, Eglinton Flat as much as possible. We have created, we had space here, and we tried to utilize it as much as possible and created a sleeve of trees again between Eglinton Avenue and the station entrances, not only to create a shield between the station entrances and the avenue, but also use that as a possible traffic impact device, between the traffic and the station, and create a more safer environment for folks that they are using the MUPs, MUP East-West, and also using the plaza, going along the East-West, the northern side of the Eglinton. The station principles again here is similar to what we showed on Scarlett, where on the western side we have the main vertical circulation of escalators and elevators, elevator and stair, and on the eastern side we only have stair and elevator, and the distance between two entrances is less than 100 meters, and therefore the required redundancy between elevators are achieved. Next slide, please. Now I'm gonna give it to Aman, my colleague, to take you through surveys.
Great, thank you, Omid. And thank you everyone for joining us today for this virtual open house. And thank you to those who were able to participate in the elevated section survey, which was live last month. So for those of you who didn't get a chance, Metrolinx did release a survey online last month, which asked respondents to share their thoughts about potential design options for features of the elevated section and the public spaces below it. We received 729 responses to this survey. There were some themes that we noticed throughout the survey, and those were that the responses showed a strong preference for protecting parkland and recreational spaces, and for protecting and adding vegetation and trees in the area under the elevated section to allow better integration to the surrounding green area. And you'll notice that this green theme percolated throughout many of the questions in the survey in the next couple of slides. So next slide, please. So you'll notice that we've separated the next couple of slides by the sections that were presented in the elevated section survey. The first was design principles. So in this question, participants were asked to rank 5 design principles for the elevated section according to how important they were. Most respondents ranked the principles of minimizing visual impacts and protecting parkland and recreational spaces as most important or important. So on this graph here, you'll see that minimizing visual impacts and protecting parkland are the bottom 2 bars, and they were the top 2. Mitigating environmental impacts, which is the 3rd bar, was number 3. Improving connectivity was number 4, and improving the public areas around the elevated section was least important among these 5. Next slide. Can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. So this section here is portals. In this question, we asked participants for their perspective on 3 opportunities for enhancing the walls around the portal. On this graph here to the side, you'll see opportunity 1 is keeping the glass wall at the portal clear to provide an opportunity to view the trains. Opportunity 2 was adding a pattern to the transparent panels that carries a symbolic meaning. And opportunity 3 was keep or add vegetation in the area around the portal where possible to make it blend into the green surroundings. As you'll see here, respondents rated opportunity 3 very highly. 73% ranked it very appealing, showing a clear preference for planting vegetation in the areas around the portals. There was some support for having opportunities to view the trains and patterned glass, with just under 50% of respondents ranking these opportunities as very or somewhat appealing. And in the next slide, you'll see the options here again. The images that go with them. Option 1, keeping the glass at the portal clear. Opportunity 2, adding a pattern. And opportunity 3, which was the most popular, was keeping or adding vegetation. Next slide. Okay, this section here is for the guardrail. So we noticed for this section that a majority of respondents supported the guardrail strategy. Some specifically liked the color and the height of the guardrail. They liked that the height provided for safety and an opportunity for passengers to look out. And some suggested that the guardrail should have more neutral or earth tone colors like green or glass elements that better blend into the surrounding area. Some were concerned about how the copper or bronze color will look with age. Next slide, please. Okay, here we have lighting. Again, we noticed that a majority of respondents supported the lighting strategy, though some did not prefer the red displayed in the rendering, which you see in the image here below. Many respondents suggested that there should be light underneath the guideway to provide safety for pedestrians and cyclists. Some suggested that the light on the guideway should be solar powered and have the ability to change color. We also had respondents that were concerned about the potential for light pollution and would like to see softer lights or motion censored lights. And we also had some respondents who specifically liked the softness of the lights. Next slide. Okay, we have another graph here. So this was for the section under the elevated section. For this question, we had 5 examples of what the space underneath the guideway could look like. And participants were asked to identify how appealing they found each example. So this is a little bit hard to read, so I'll read it out from top to bottom. The first here is install a series of information plaques at points along the areas beneath the elevated section to showcase Indigenous historical significance. The second one is provide opportunity for trees, meadow, or other low growth habitat / pollinator habitat for areas under the elevated section near the road, and for areas under the elevated section at Humber River, restore the landscape with natural. Third is maintain a typical boulevard look with mowed grass. 4 is create open space with the possibility of public seating areas or other creative features next to the stations. And 5 is use murals as part of a combined program to showcase art and help deter graffiti. You'll see the second bar, most respondents preferred that opportunity at 57%, and that was providing an opportunity for trees, meadow, or other low growth habitat / pollinator habitat for areas under the elevated section. This will be posted online, so you can have a closer look at your own time and pace. Next slide. Okay, so with this survey, our goal is to create an elevated section that is welcoming and suited for the surrounding area, which is why we're so thrilled to have your input and to present this back to you today. This isn't the end of the engagement. The input obtained through this survey will be taken into consideration as the detailed designs for the elevated guideway are prepared, and we will come back to engage the community on a renaturalization strategy at a later date. And of course, we continue to work with Toronto Parks and Forestry and the TRCA to ensure that park access and active uses of the park are maintained throughout. And of course, if you didn't get an opportunity to participate in this elevated section survey, we're still here. So if you have any input, feedback, questions, concerns that you'd like to let us know, there will be a slide at the end of this presentation with our contact information. But you can email us anytime at eglintonwest@metrolinx.com. And I'll turn it over to David. For the next.
So on the next slide, we've got a final section as part of our presentation this evening to follow up on the elevated stations and the elevated guideway survey. There's some feedback and some reporting back to the community on a couple of the smaller design elements as part of the project. So on the Fergie Brown Park access road, we engaged over the past year with the community and with our colleagues at City of Toronto, Parks and Forestry and Transportation. We were we advised on a requirement to modify the access road that currently provides access into Fergie Brown Park and the Eglinton Flats area. So as part of the construction, there's going to be a change to that access road. And some of the feedback that we heard with respect to the access road was, prioritization of maintaining park access at all times. Attempting not to segregate the the park from Piran Park. So, you know, continuing a healthy connection between both Fergie Brown Park and Piran Park. Overall construction coordination amongst the projects. You know, there's a lot of active construction and a lot of projects happening in the Mount Dennis community. And then mitigating noise and impacts to park users through the duration of construction and operations of the line. So we will be reporting back on that in this evening. So the next couple slides we'll talk about that. And then before we head on to the next slide, there's also a lot of coordination and effort that's been done on the design for the multi-use path in the Jane and Eglinton area. So some of the feedback that we've heard on the multi-use path is you know, high prioritization of accessibility and safety for bike users, continuing ensuring that connectivity and continuous bicycle network is expanded and preserved, reducing impact to Piran Park as it relates to, you know, overall construction, and potential options to evaluate a multi-use path on the south side. So there was some feedback from the community on prioritization of the trees that currently exist that line the Eglinton roadway, and then and whether or not a south side option for a multi-use path was feasible or not. So with that being said, that's a summary of what we've heard to date, and you know, I'll pass it over to my colleague Henry to take us through the next sections of the presentation and how we've aimed to address some of these concerns that we've heard from the community so far.
Thank you. Next, that's great. So firstly, I wanted to touch on the Fergie Brown access road. You know, as David said, the feedback and engagement from the community has been really valuable, and we've engaged heavily with City of Toronto, TRCA and other stakeholders to really understand what's the best approach to this for everybody. Going through that feedback, people may know that previously we'd been looking at an idea where the access was moved east up the road. But based on the feedback and design updates, we managed to refine the design of the project such that we can reinstate the access actually very close to its current location. And if you see the image on the bottom of the screen there, it's the option on the left-hand side. So at the end of the project, the access will be reinstated to very close to its existing location, just a little bit west. And the advantage of this approach is it enables us to maintain all vehicle movements. It's a shorter route. It avoids needs for sort of structures and other things that will be disruptive to the park environment. And part of this, as well, I'd add, is that the approach has been taken that an access will be maintained throughout all stages of construction as well, similar, close to its current location. Next slide, please. The other topic, as David said, that we've heard lots of feedback on is how do we maintain a really good cycling and active mobility connectivity through the corridor throughout construction. In order to enable construction, the multi-use path and sections on the sidewalk of the sidewalk on the north side do need to be closed, and the approach that's been developed is to create a continuous bi-directional cycle track on the south side of Eglinton all the way through from Jane Street through to Black Creek Drive. And you'll see on this image that's essentially connecting us from the existing south side multi-use path cycle route that's west of Jane all the way through to the multi-use park path that is being implemented by ECLRT east of Black Creek. Also will be maintaining the sidewalk throughout construction as well. If you see in the cross section below, the way that is being achieved is to use part of the existing vehicle travel lanes for the bidirectional cycle lane. And those who know the local area will know that this is reasonably similar to the approach that's been taken on Scarlett Road, where physical concrete barriers are used to segregate the cycle route from the road surface, but a continuous protected route can be provided in that location. At the end of construction, the multi-use path and sidewalk will be reinstated on the north side to provide that close access to the park that you have at the moment. Next slide, please. A key part of the work on the project has been understanding how throughout the period of construction we can ensure that that traffic remains moving and Eglinton remains a really working street. And that isn't just for cars, it's for transit, it's for bus stops, it's for pedestrians, it's for active mobility, and it's for cycling. And we've taken a full sort of analysis approach to looking at all those different modes and understanding how they may be impacted, how we can minimize those impacts, and what we can do to maintain Eglinton moving as well as we can. The figure you see on the screen shows various sections that we've been looking at for the road and been studying each of those to understand what are the potential impacts that are necessary because of construction and how we can mitigate those. So working from the left to the right of the page, west of Scarlett, the main impact in this area is that we'll need to close the north side sidewalk in order to build the station, and at times there will be a lane reduction on Eglinton to a lane in each direction. We'll also be closing the driveway to 25 and 39 Richview Road in this location. However, at all times the MEP on the south side will remain open. Similarly, in section 2, just east of Scarlett, also to help build the station, the north side will be closed. There will be some lane reduction, but as with across this whole section, bus stops and transit facilities will remain, and the south side MEP will remain. Through section 3, the impacts are limited, but primarily there'll be a north side sidewalk closure. The road will remain in its current configuration, and the MEP on the south side will remain. In section 4, we've just been discussing that area in terms of the MEP. So as you'll be aware, we have a north side sidewalk and MEP closer. There'll be some lane reduction primarily to support the new cycle route that we're providing. Bus stops will remain in place. And for section 5, east of Western Road, similarly there'll be some north side sidewalk closures, but we'll have this new south side cycle track. There'll be pedestrian access will be maintained to the station at all times, and there'll be a small amount of lane reduction, but bus stop and transit facilities will remain. Next slide, please. This slide really recaps some of those principles we've been using as we've been developing this approach to keeping the street working. And I think it's worth remembering that one of the key principles in the project through this section has been to have Eglinton aligned off the street, which really helps keep the road moving and to minimise impact on it. And to highlight again, our approach here has been to balance impact so that we're making sure that it remains an accessible street, a street for active mobility users, for pedestrians, and for transit users as well as car drivers. So to highlight those key elements again, keeping that continuous sidewalk on the south side of Eglinton throughout all construction stages, creating that continuous cycle and active mobility corridor along east-west, the same route through all stages of construction, so it's clear for the community and people understand a continuous setup throughout the period of construction, minimizing those lane reductions, and of course continuing to listen to and understand community feedback throughout these stages. We've been working very closely with the City of Toronto throughout this stage to both explain the potential impacts, hear their feedback, and adapt our plans to respond to that feedback. And working with the City of Toronto staff will be bringing plans to City Council this summer that articulate these long-term plans. Next slide, please. Another area that we know has been important for stakeholder and community feedback has been in relation to the driveway closure of the properties at Richview. So to recap, that's been presented, I think, previously, is that as a result of the portal and the structures as the tunnel comes out of the ground, the existing driveway does need to be closed. We've looked at a wide range of different approaches and options to ensure that residents of that property can still access the wider road network adequately, and that the impacts on that wider road network are minimized. It is now proposed, and it is our proposal, that the intersection of Richview Road and Scarlett, you'll see there in the plan, is signalised. Currently, that's a priority intersection, and it will be signalised as part of the project. And that, as with those other lane impacts, is being taken in consultation with the City of Toronto through to City Council this year to support its approval and ensure it can be implemented as part of that driveway closure. Thank you. Next slide, over to David, I think. Oh.
Yeah, thanks, Henry. So just as we wrap up here, really appreciate the feedback and support that we continue to receive from the community. A lot of good questions, good challenges, an effort, making effort on the project side to respond to feedback, changes such as the Fergie Brown Park access road and the multi-use path solution that we've figured out. We're encouraged and continue to be encouraged by the feedback that we're receiving. We'd appreciate the ongoing feedback through the poll that's on the Metrolinx Engage website right now on the station design principles and features, and that will be up for the next month or so. And we will continue to input into the design once we hear back from the community on those station design features that we've shown so far. I'll hand it over to Joseph now to start the Q&A period. I believe we're having some minor technical difficulties still in the Zoom room, but hopefully we can move forward seamlessly and effortlessly, Joseph, as we go into the Q&As. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you so much, David, and thank you to all of our panelists. That was a huge amount of information. And as someone who has been moderating these meetings now for the past year and a half, I found it, and I want to say thank you for not just asking for input, but also responding to the input, the number of slides, the amount of time that you spent reflecting on what you have heard through these sessions is very good. So thank you for that, and thank you for the info. Now, there is an opportunity for people to ask further questions and to provide further input. As David said, there is a Zoom room. I believe that the sound may have been intermittent in the Zoom room, but if you'd like to ask a question directly, you can go over there and we'll try a couple questions. And if the sound is working so that the panelists can hear you, we will take questions from the Zoom room. That'll come up in a couple seconds. We'll start out with some written questions first. And of course, if you don't want to chance the Zoom room, it's not too late to write your questions in here on the page with the video that you're watching. Just scroll down to the bottom and you'll find a place to answer, to add a question. Also, the survey that David has spoken of, right below the green agenda button or the green agenda box is heading presentation materials with a yellow button that says, tell us what you think about the station designs. And now that you've seen the presentation, and any time during the meeting or after, you can simply click on that yellow button to go to the survey and provide your input. And as you saw in the presentation, it is being paid attention to and it is being considered and analyzed. So please, please, please ask a question or provide your input. So I talked about your feedback. I talked about you responding. There is an elephant in the room that has been here throughout this project. And I want to raise it at the beginning because there were a number of questions that weren't strictly on topic for tonight, but they come up again. And that is the issue of burying the entire line instead of having the elevated section. Anyone who's read the written questions will see that there were questions about, have you actually listened to people? Have the financial cases, the financial case that's been presented, is it reliable? How about the people who continue to be opposed? Is there any opportunity for them to still make their voice heard? So I wonder, knowing that there is opposition to the elevated section, if you'd care to deal with that straight up off the top.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. I'll respond to this question. So, appreciate the ongoing feedback on the alignment for the project and specifically the elevated guideway section and whether or not that could be tunneled. You know, that this decision is one that we've you know, communicated openly and transparently over the past year to the community, and in both our virtual open houses, and we've had numerous sessions with local community groups and residents of the community, whereby, you know, we tried our best to respond to some of the concerns and issues that were raised with respect to elevated guideway versus a potential tunnel alignment. As part of the, you know, our business case practice at Metrolinx, we have a standardized process whereby we analyze various different options and solutions to deliver transit across the corridor. And the initial business case, we continue to reference it, but that, you know, that is the tool that Metrolinx undertakes in order to provide the evidence, the analysis, and overall advice to decision makers, such as government, who will be making decisions on how the project is delivered and funded, and which project is actually funded. So we've made great efforts to you know, move the project along to deliver transit in the Eglinton West area in an efficient way. So, you know, there's been a lot of communication and a lot of activity on the design and procurement side of things. So at this point in time, we've issued, we've gone forward with in-market activities to seek a designer and constructor for, you know, various elements of the project. That's the tunneled section from Renforth to Scarlett, and now we are in active procurement on the elevated guideway and the second tunnel between just east of Jane Street and connecting into Mount Dennis. So you know, that signifies, you know, tremendous progress on the project and our commitment to deliver the project by 2030 or 2031. So at this point, you know, we continue to, you know, seek feedback from the community on elements of the project, such as, you know, the elevated guideway design, such that Amin spoke about this evening, and you know, those are the elements of the project where we value the community's feedback, and we believe that we can actually collect that feedback to make a better project. As part of the, I think, Joseph, you hit on sort of the financial evaluation between the tunnels and elevated options as part of the business case. You know, there were various different options in the business case that were analyzed, and you know, there's an option that's fully tunneled with 9 stations, and you know, it's a balance between what are the costs and benefits of the various different options, and there's options through the business case process that are unique and provide different analysis that contributes to the overall decision making for the process for the project. So you know, we stand by the financial evaluation as part of that business case framework, and you know, despite there being a different number of stations and different, it really just contributed to the overall analysis to make the best and most robust decision that we can make to move forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, David. I think we may not always, as citizens, like what we hear, but it's important that we are heard and listened to. and I hope that the project team will continue to reflect on that and respond. And I appreciate the way that you have responded to that. We may hear more when we go to the Zoom room in a second. I want to ask a couple of the written questions, and then we'll go to the Zoom room. But the first one is about tree cover and the tree inventory. And one of the questioners asked that according to the tree inventory and arborist report completed in 2021, how many trees will be removed by Metrolinx to facilitate construction and operation of the 1.5 kilometer elevated line?
Thanks, Joseph, for the question. I'll pass to Sarah, our subject matter expert on the environmental side, to respond.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Joseph. So since the 2021 arborist report that was preliminary kind of drawn up, we've had several different design changes and on the project footprint. So as a result, we've had to re-go and figure out the field work and go back out and do further tree inventories. Some further tree inventory field work scheduled for later on this year, in the next couple of months, in fact. Once that field work is complete, they will update that arborist report with more accurate numbers of the types of or the numbers of trees that are likely to be impacted from the project. So that's kind of like the step one. Once we have that arborist report with some numbers, we'll be coming back to the community, hopefully later on this summer, with some numbers of what we think the actual impacts might be looking like. In addition, we'll be also communicating with the City of Toronto and the TRCA, who we've been working with very, very closely up until now when it comes to the tree impacts. We're also working closely with Indigenous nations. We've asked the nations if they would be interested in participating in our field work. So that's also something that we're going to continue to do to try and get all of the feedback we can from the different kind of stakeholders, including the community, of course. Obviously, we're aware of the importance of the trees in the neighborhood, in the community, and it is definitely one of our top priorities when we're making design decisions. And our number one priority is to try and minimize the number of trees that we're impacting as much as possible. So obviously there will be some impacts, but trying to refine that design to get that number down as much as possible is definitely one of our top priorities. And also we are making sure that we compensate for any trees removed as much as possible. So we'll be compensating through the City of Toronto's bylaw requirements. But in addition, we're going a step above that by going through the Metrolinx vegetation guideline and also compensating using the TRCA's ecological compensation. So some of you may know, last year we've actually already started replanting in certain areas along the alignment, and so that replanting will still continue through 2022, 2023, and throughout the whole project term. And our whole idea is that we want to be able to start replanting in the area as early as possible, so it allows the trees to mature by the time the other trees are actually removed. So that's definitely something that's ongoing by us. And as well, we'll be working very closely to make sure that any restoration plans for the areas that are cleared are robust, accounts for any comments from the City of Toronto, from Indigenous nations, from the TRCA, as well as the community.
Thank you for that, Sarah. And for the community, when you have more information, how will you be communicating that to people? How will I find out about it?
So I believe we'll be sharing it through virtual open houses or potentially within our project website. So we'll probably refine the exact measures, how we communicate that, but we will definitely be getting it out to the community.
Okay, that's great. So if I'm here tonight and I keep on paying attention, I can stay in the loop. And do you have a newsletter that if I sign up for it, where you will send me information about the ongoing process?
I maybe, if it's okay, I might pass that over to Amin,
Yes.
if that's okay.
Yeah. If you'd like to sign up for our newsletter, you can do so at metrolinx.com/Eglinton West. So it is on the slide that's, yeah.
Okay, and then you'll proactively send me information and I can stay abreast. Excellent.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for that information, Sarah and Aman. The tunnel boring machine portal, there's a question about the dimensions of that. And is it 80 meters long and 20 meters wide? Will the Scarlett extraction shaft portal and the Jane launch portal be the same dimensions? If not, what are the dimensions? What's the size of that particular portal with those portals as they're as they are dug?
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. Thank you for the question. There's two different functions on the portal side of things. So the Scarlett portal will serve for the duration of construction as an extraction shaft. So that's where the tunnel boring machines will be extracted from the ground piece by piece once the machines arrive in that area. So you'll be reminded that through our West End Connectors partners on the project, they are starting tunnel construction at Renforth and traveling east along Eglinton to reach the Scarlett portal. And then the Jane portal will serve for the duration of construction of the other tunnel contract. Will serve as a starting point for the tunnel boring machine. So it's actually the launching point. So the nature of the two portals serve different purposes, and the sizes are dependent on the serving those functions for those different extraction and launching activities. So while on the West End Connectors side of things, it's not the focus of the discussion this evening. So I don't believe we have the exact dimensions available for the extraction shaft at Scarlett, but we can commit to the community to provide a response, immediately after the public virtual open house on the dimensions of that portal and extraction shaft specifically. I'll provide the opportunity if Henry and or Omid want to add anything.
No? Okay, well, thank you for that. And you make a good point. We won't get to all of the written questions tonight, but Metrolinx is responding to written questions for each of the open houses. So you can go back and look at the previous open houses and see responses to the questions. And even if you ask a question here tonight and we don't get to it during the session, Metrolinx staff will review it and they respond to all of the major topic areas. Let me turn to a question that Tristan asked in the Zoom room. This one came in by text, and in a second we're going to try and go over to the voice line. But Tristan asked, will there be retail in the two stations? The area has a lack of shops, causing people to drive to get necessities. Also, will there be washrooms in all stations on the Crosstown in addition to the terminal and interchange stations? Washroom access is important to everyone. So I wonder if you could talk about retail and washroom access, please.
Thank you, Tristan, for the question through the Zoom room. I'll pass to Omid on the station side of things to talk about both retail and washrooms.
Thanks, David, and thanks, Tristan from the Zoom room. I'm going to respond to washroom first. For the purpose of Eglinton West Extension, the stations that we are covering in Eglinton West, which are 7 stations, we have one universal public washroom at each station to provide access for public for the washroom. In terms of retail, Metrolinx has a retail team which is looking at each station, and in the case of Eglinton West stations, they have looked at various type of retail facilities, and they came to conclusion that any fixed shop or retail as such in Eglinton West may not be appropriate in the context that we are in. There is a conversation for a plug-in and play type of vending machine facilities, in the paid or unpaid areas. That is subject to further conversation and confirmation with folks at Metrolinx. I hope I answered the question.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much, Omid. So we are going to try the Zoom room, and I'm hoping that Gurjeet can hear me and that you may have a questioner ready for us.
Thank you, Joseph. I can hear you. Are you able to hear me?
Oh,
hello.
Dear. I think that Gurjeet just cut out for me. Are the other panelists hearing Gurjeet? No, we aren't. Gurjeet, if you can hear me, I think that what we'll need to do is to do written questions out of that room. So let's just pick up on another written question that came out of the text in the Zoom room, and this one was from Rose. What design measures, she asked the panelists, are set in place to mitigate noise for residents? So specifically when we're dealing with the elevated section and the elevated stations, what are you doing about noise mitigation?
Thanks, Rose, for the question. I'll pass to Sarah and/or Omid to respond.
Sure, I can probably get started. So the noise assessment, so we did complete a noise assessment back in 2020 as part of the 2020 EPR addendum. So that particular assessment is available online on our website, so you're able to review that. However, since then we have, as mentioned before, made some further refinements to our project footprints and design changes, which means that we're also now working on an updated acoustic report and a noise and vibration assessment. So that is still ongoing. So any specific project-specific noise reducing measures that may be required will be provided to the community once that report is finalized. But in the meantime, there are several different measures that we're currently adopting, which does help to reduce the noise impact from the operation of the LRT or the light rail vehicle, which include the continuously welded rail, so there's less noise from joints and that causes clanking. We have limited sharp turns, so there's less noise from wheel squeal. The vehicles are obviously electric, so that's always beneficial. I think there's some other elements there as well. Omid, I don't know if you could add to that list.
I think you covered most of it, Sarah. Thank you for that. Just to complement what Sarah already mentioned, as part of those mitigations, there are some, what we call them, track level mitigation in terms of the way that the track formation is done to help with mitigation. But that design is basically subject to first understanding through our reports and analysis to see what level of mitigation is required. There are also general, in the general shape of elevated guideway has some slight upstanding around the elevated guideway, and that upstands will also help with trying to contain noise in the section of elevated guideway as much as possible, and make sure that the receptors around the elevated guideway are least impacted. The report eventually will identify any potential receptor that might be in the vicinity of elevated guideway, which might have exceeded the allowance for the noise and vibration, and then mitigation measures will be there and will be as part of the project done to make sure that any increased noise or vibration is mitigated.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Omid, for that response. We have another question from Hayden in the Zoom room. And Hayden says, I'm Hayden, an urban planning student at the Toronto Metropolitan University, and I am very concerned about the intersection design at stations. The station overview shown today indicate that there will be right turning lanes and bus bays in the east-west direction, making pedestrians needing to cross 7 lanes of traffic. The bus bays for TTC Route 32 is likely not needed, as it will likely operate less than every 20 minutes per hour once the extension opens. Pedestrian safety is very important, and every effort should be made to reduce crossing distance. I think that's a comment from Hayden, but he's clearly looked closely. Could you respond to his analysis, his assessment of that intersection?
Thanks, Hayden. Great question, and great commentary and feedback there. The intersection designs at the stations, and the design of the roadway itself. Metrolinx consults very closely with both City of Toronto Transportation Services and our TTC colleagues who are responsible for operating bus service across the Eglinton corridor. So a lot of the input in the design and the prioritization of bus stop locations and right turning channels and various different turning channels are really subject to the requirements and feedback that we receive from those stakeholders. With that being said, we take pedestrian safety and overall safety of all road users and active transportation users very seriously at Metrolinx, and it's definitely a key and fundamental part of the station design that we're moving forward with. So with that being said, there are intersection roadway improvements at the major north-south intersections that we are exploring with the City of Toronto, really to bring those intersections, to upgrade those intersections in line with Vision Zero requirements that the City of Toronto has a mandate to deliver through City of Toronto Council. So we will continue those discussions, and when design updates are fed into the process, we'll report back to the community on our findings and any potential changes there.
Okay, thank you, David, and thank you, Hayden, for your question. Another question from the Zoom room, this one from Fabrizio, and it's short and sweet. Is the traffic study ready?
Thanks, Fabrizio. We made a commitment on the traffic study side of things that the analysis was underway, and that we do have ongoing work on the traffic study. I will pass to Henry. Can you respond to this question, Henry?
Yes, I can add to that to say that there are a range of traffic studies, if you like, for the corridor. It's not a single all-encompassing document. As you heard in the presentation earlier today, we've been engaging very closely with the City of Toronto, particularly focusing on some of the impacts that occur over a longer duration for these first two contracts. So more information will be made public as part of the City of Toronto staff report that as they go to council, which will provide some further information, and we're obviously going back and forth with the City of Toronto to listen to their feedback and work together to finalise results through that. So there will be certainly more information visible in the months ahead.
I will add on that. I will add on that, Henry. Sorry, Joseph. So there is ongoing discussions with respect to other projects in the area, such as there's a development project at One Richview, and the design and progression of that project in relation to our project has more larger impacts and larger considerations that Metrolinx is working on in collaboration with the developer and the property owner, City of Toronto Transportation Services, as Henry mentioned, and we're looking to bring forward all of that work and all of those various different development projects in a coordinated way. So you can expect in the future that there will be a more fulsome discussion on traffic impacts and studies in that specifically in that Scarlett, Eglinton, and Richview area.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. We have a question in the Zoom room from Rick. Can you give us an example of another location in Toronto or elsewhere where operational LRT trains pass as close to residential units as these trains will be on the north side west of Scarlett? So is this really close? Is there an example of the alignment being as close to buildings elsewhere that gives you confidence that the noise and vibration will be tolerable for the people who are near it?
Hi, Rick. Thank you for the question. Not sure on the specific setbacks or examples that we can provide off the top of our heads, but we will definitely connect with you and specifically respond to this question. From our understanding and experience, there's a significant amount of transit infrastructure projects in operation around the world, in both Canada and globally, whereby elevated transit infrastructure is very, very close and adjacent to other residential and or commercial uses. So we will take that back and provide a commitment to respond in short order. Omid and the team, is there any other feedback that you have right now?
Yeah, just quickly, I think definitely we can, do more, research and make sure that we provide, ample information. But a couple of examples came to my mind just for the purpose of just giving an example. For those of you who are, familiar with Southeast Asia, there's a lot of elevated corridors in South Asia. There's a very close proximity between elevated guideways and residential places. Close to home in Vancouver, in Canada Line, there is a Marine Gateway transit-oriented development right next to elevated guideway, which has been built and is operational right now in Vancouver. I think the key, obviously, is to make sure that required setbacks are taken into account. To make sure that any noise and vibration is taken into account. To make sure that overall the proximity and adjacency of a transit-oriented development or any type of mixed-use development next to elevated guideway is all taken care of.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That was helpful. So we've had we're here online as we've been for the last 2 years, and we had a question in the written questions. We've just gotten a question in the Zoom room about when will face-to-face in-person meetings come back. These kinds of meetings allow for people to participate of their own kitchens, but many people aren't comfortable with technology or would like to be able to be person to person. Does Metrolinx have a plan or an intention to begin to reintroduce face-to-face meetings at some point?
Thanks for the feedback and the general comment. I think there's a desire to get back to in person and face to face. With the changing nature of the pandemic, we continue to keep our pulse on restrictions and opportunities to look at community in-person meetings or various different sessions. Opportunities for community walks perhaps is something that we've been thinking about at Metrolinx. I will pass to Amin. Do you have any feedback from the community engagement side of things, Amin?
Just like you said, we continue to monitor the health guidelines, but we have started doing some in-person meetings with smaller groups. We were out at the Lemonwood community earlier last week. And of course, if there's a meeting that you would like us to attend, a smaller group meeting, we're happy to come out there. You can always just send us an email at eglintonwest@metrolinx.com. We're happy to be out there with you. And yeah, we're looking forward to larger group meetings as soon as the health guidelines allow.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to go back to some of the written questions. Station names mean a lot for a community identity. Will the community get more of a chance to provide feedback and have a role in deciding the names of the stations on the ECWE?
Yes, thanks for the question, Joseph. I think absolutely there will be opportunity in future for station naming and other exciting events related to the project. You'll remember that just a few months ago we did a tunnel boring machine naming contest, and there were 2 names that were selected for the tunnel boring machines that have just started tunneling as part of the advanced tunnel contract from Renforth. So there will definitely be opportunity. Current work on the project has been focused on the station design and collecting input specifically on the stations, but you can definitely expect community input and feedback and opportunity for future engagement on station naming.
Okay, thank you. There's a question about this is happening in our community, and the construction is happening all around us. There's a question about webcam portals, webcams at the portals and the stations for the sidewalk superintendents among us. Have you looked at installing webcam cameras at the portals and elevated stations as they're being built? Assuming Metrolinx will have CCTVs for security purposes, how about relaying a live YouTube feed for us mere mortals to follow?
Thanks, Joseph. That's a really interesting question. We understand and appreciate that construction of the projects is exciting, and the community wants to see live footage and footage as frequently as possible. So we're always happy to share, and we always proactively share ongoing construction updates and photos on our websites and blogs. There's oftentimes opportunities for time-lapse videos at various stages of the project construction, where there's a bit more interactivity with the form of media that comes out. So that's the time-lapse videos are taken from the video equipment that's installed on site to capture these key milestones of the project. So we will keep you informed as a community with videos and photos along the way for the construction of the project. And as Amin highlighted earlier, if you subscribe to our new newsletter and frequently check our project page for updates, you'll oftentimes see a lot of those exciting updates. On the CCTV cameras and security cameras at stations, I'll hand over to Omid to discuss how those are incorporated into our station design.
Sure. In the station, thanks for this question. For in the case of station design and what we are anticipating as part of the station approach, the SEPTED issues and safety and security of our passengers are number one priority. So, there will be CCTVs in all public spaces of the station, so that all public stations of the station will be monitored in and around the station. So I think there's going to be a study or a requirement also asked from the potential bidders to demonstrate the full coverage of all the public spaces in and around the stations, and based on that, then the CCTVs will be deployed.
Okay, thank you. During the presentation, when you were showing the right-of-way, we saw the Pearson extension, and there was a question submitted, a long question submitted earlier. I won't reread the whole question, but can you provide any more information about when the preliminary design for the Pearson extension will be available and the timing of that? The questioner online is suggesting that the real value of the ECWE won't be realized until that Pearson extension is done. So can you provide a bit more information about the timing on that?
Thank you, Joseph. We inherently understand and appreciate the value of connecting the Eglinton Crosstown West extension to Pearson Airport, and there is an overall commitment from Metrolinx and government to deliver upon that work. There's recently been in the news some funding commitments from the federal government with respect to furthering the planning and design stage for that project. Transport Canada recently announced some initial funding for the Pearson connection through the Airport Critical Infrastructure Program. And Metrolinx is currently working with our partners at the Greater Toronto Airports Authority and the province and the federal government to understand how and when we can actually bring that project forward. So we are still in the planning phases of the project, so we don't exactly have timelines and commitments that we can report on this evening, but please keep on checking for updates and responding and posting your questions, because that continues to show the excitement and the interest in the project, and hopefully we'll be able in a position to announce that kickstarting of that work in the near future.
Okay, we've got time for one more question. And during your presentation, you showed cross sections of the elevated stations. And there's a question about the color and the materials for those stations. The questioner is talking about the 50 shades of gray that seem to be used in a lot of transit, and asking whether or not other colors could be used that would blend better with the colors of the trees and the shrubs along the Humber River in Eglinton.
David, do you want me to respond? Yes.
Yeah. I'll just start off with saying, the cross section shown in the presentation on slide 9 is not indicative of the color scheme and the design of the station. It's just meant to show the key elements of the elevated station. So I'll pass to Omid to discuss the colors and how that's influenced.
Thanks, David, and thanks for folks in the community to pay attention to these kind of details. It's actually encouraging from our side. We also saw similar comment on underground stations where our future users basically are commenting about using colors to make each station belongs to the context in which they are locating. And in the case of elevated guideway and in the case of elevated stations, we have an overall design language and design vision where we're trying to make sure that the overall Eglinton line will be read as one consistent line, paying attention to the fact that the extension of Eglinton is actually 10 years younger than ECLRT. So, a bit of refreshment, of course, is done there. But having said that, we also appreciated the fact that we need to use colors intentionally in public spaces in the stations, such that public will understand where these stations are located, relate to them, and get the feeling of belonging to the context in which they are locating. So we are using some of those approaches, and mainly on the internal side of the stations, and in the external side of the stations, we are trying to make sure that our language and the type of material that we are using is close to what is ended at Mount Dennis, in a way of a mix of glazing and some sort of white cladding plus the distinct orange fin and canopies that Eglinton ECLRT has, and then we are borrowing that language in the external formation of our station entrances and amenities, and then internally we are making sure that we actually respond to the nature that we are sitting in the case of Jane Station and Scarlett, and making sure that we are adding some motifs that they are sensitive to the context in which that they are located.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Omid. You get the last word. Thank you to all of the panelists tonight. Thank you for the information you provided. And thank you to everybody who participated, who's been here, and who has asked a question. Now, please, as I said, go and click on the Tell Us What You Think About the Station Designs yellow button. Your input will be considered by the project team, and you can get there before you sign off tonight. The video of tonight's meeting will be posted. You can always come back to this page and see a replay of the video, and Metrolinx's team will be reviewing all the questions and making sure that all the major topics are responded to in writing. I believe it was you, Aman, who said earlier this is not the last of these meetings. There will be more opportunities. You've heard about when Metrolinx will be coming back with more information. So please continue to participate. Thank you for your input tonight, and keep safe. Good night, everybody.